What's going on, guys? Good evening and welcome to the program. Of course, it's your boy Steve back with Stateside Footy. And do we have ourselves a discussion tonight? Because a couple days ago, MLS announced there is going to be a new commissioner moving forward. The end of Don Garber is upon us, and now it's time for the Larry Berg era to begin in Major League Soccer. So there's a lot to talk about. And if you guys are joining us on TikTok live, make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe button. There's a link in the description. And of course, for those that are tuning in, please do me a favor and show the channel some love by hitting that like and subscribe button. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. So Larry Berg is the new commissioner. And listen, this conversation has to begin because once this thing was announced, the only thing it seemed a lot of people wanted to talk about was promotion relegation. And the reality is that shit ain't happening. And I hate to be the guy that burst the bubble. It just is what it is. Don Garber, I think earlier this year said never say never, but Larry Berg was like, nah, I'll say never. And I think his quote was, it's actually kind of funny. His quote was, I can understand the appeal for the fan, but I don't think it's a great way to build a league. I don't think it's a great way to get stadiums built, to get training facilities built, and to have owners invest in rosters and all the other things that you need to do. So I don't think it's appropriate for our league. I think Don has said before, never say never. I just don't think it's happening anytime soon. So there you go. There you go. That is the guy that's taking over this January saying squadoosh. Absolutely not. And, for all you pro rel guys out there, USL is going to be implementing it in about a year and a half. I think it's at the start of the 2028-29 season. So there you go. It'll be here really goddamn quick. So there you go. But okay, so the interesting thing about this is, for those that don't know, Larry Berg is the managing partner of LAFC. And apparently he's got a reputation, I guess you can say, for politics, right? And what do I mean by politics? He's the type of guy that can get other owners to do shit. And I think the biggest thing was the last roster changes, and I believe it was for maybe Messi's extension. I guess that's the best way of saying it. And of course, Messi was adamant that certain things change when it comes to the roster rules, because he wanted to be surrounded by good players, and he wasn't inclined to either A, come to Major League Soccer and then play against a bunch of scrubs, or B, extend his stay in Major League Soccer and play against a bunch of scrubs. And so from that standpoint, Major League Soccer had to open things a little bit. And apparently Larry Berg was the guy that was calling all the owners. And it's weird because they have owners meetings, but they also have pods. Like they'll have like meetings in little groups of ownerships. And apparently he was influential in, essentially getting owners on the same page when it came to certain roster rules. Now, the thing about this is coming up, there is a proposal for roster changes. And of course, that is from what has been, I guess you could say, leaked. That would be a salary cap that would be up around 30 million. A roster floor of about 15, which is, kind of where most teams are like in that 15 to 20 range right now. But that would certainly open things up. They would get rid of allocation money, so TAM, and they would get rid of GAM. And they would literally just allow, teams to essentially open up the pocketbook. And the interesting thing about this is we're going to find out what direction this league is going to be headed in, because the interesting thing, it's like when you read Paul Tenorio, and of course he wrote the book called The Messi Effect, and he released a chapter, or a few pages of a chapter where it was kind of outlining that Larry Berg was very influential in getting things done around the league. Okay, well, that's great. But when it comes to overhauling roster regulations, there are going to be owners that want to keep the status quo because, quite honestly, they don't like spending money. And the biggest issue with this is potentially going to have a league of the haves and have-nots, because clearly there are owners that have been dying to spend money. That is very, very, very clear. And I think we're kind of seeing it in small doses right now. But if the Band-Aid gets ripped off, you probably have 5 or 6 teams that are going to try to outgun each other every single season. You're going to see outgoings, you're going to see incomings, and you're going to see, essentially big market teams that are going to dominate when it comes to MLS Cup. You're going to have teams that are going to look at this and say, well, check this out. I guess you can say our match day revenue doesn't necessarily reflect a situation where we can go out and just spend unlimited amounts of money. But what we can do is we can invest even more into our academy and make sure that our first team is nothing but, I guess you could say, a proving ground where young kids will come up, they'll compete, they'll sell, and then they'll just keep redoing the exact same things. Maybe some teams will hold on to some of those stars. Each team is going to have 3 DP spots, right? So if you're a Seattle Sounders fan, I can somewhat envision that scenario happening, considering they're already doing it. But one of the things would be that you would have teams like Montreal, you would have teams like Kansas City, Colorado, Real Salt Lake, Austin, Dallas that's already doing it, Portland, San Jose. I know San Jose has spent over the last couple of years. I get that, but that's because they hired Bruce Arena, and Bruce wouldn't take that job unless they operate a little bit differently. But there are going to be teams that are going to look at this and say, listen, we have a pretty solid season ticket base. Our match day revenue is pretty good. But that being said, I do not want to spend. And the best example of this is Major League Baseball. And the funny thing about Major League Baseball is that every team is profitable, regardless of what anybody tells you. There's a lot of gimmickry when it comes to accounts and how these teams, write their books, where it shows a lot of cash losses. But in actuality, really, for the most part, because there's profit sharing in Major League Baseball, because there's a huge TV deal, every team is profitable. But you see a lot of teams that are in a constant state of rebuilding. Because why go out there and spend $300 million on a free agent when you can just cultivate your own? And you're going to see that in Major League Soccer, to a point where I would probably say that on a year-to-year turnover, you would probably have 5, maybe 6 teams that would be exchanging the MLS Cup, because you're going to have those progressive owners that look at this as an opportunity to not only, I guess you can say, excel the brand, but their crest, their brand, but also the league as well too. And they're going to take a very proactive approach to it. And I think that's actually going to be great in a lot of senses, because you're going to be able to market those teams. And again, I know this is just a little off topic, but here's the reality. It's like Major League Soccer does not sell storylines. But if you're in a situation where you have rivalries because of spending, you're going to create a league that are going to be, I guess you can say it's the same thing with NFL and Major League Baseball. It's going to be good versus evil. You're going to be able to sell these storylines. And from that standpoint, there's going to be, I guess, an argument to be made that because you're going to have 5, 6 teams at the top that are continuously gunning for MLS Cup, that the storylines writes itself, and that from that standpoint, casual fans will latch themselves on. But for the rest of the league and for the rest of the fan bases, there's going to be, it sucks, there's going to be fans of teams that understand coming into the season that they're not going to win MLS Cup at all, unless for whatever reason their young team goes on a run and gets into the playoffs, or whatever the case may be. But for the most part, you're going to see that. And I would probably go so far as to say that when spending does happen, it's just going to be journeyman signing, because they're just not going to be shopping in that kind of category. And so from that standpoint, that could be a very good thing, or that can be a very bad thing. And the question is, is this the direction that Larry Berg is going to be taking us in? Because on the one hand, I can understand that, yeah, we're 30 years old now. The training wheels need to come off at some point. And because we have an infrastructure in place where most owners now are measured in billions, not millions, because we have soccer-specific stadiums that do well when it comes to generating revenue, because we have state-of-the-art training grounds, and now we have free academies, that the groundwork has already been laid. And now it's time to actually kind of flex that muscle. And so from that standpoint, yeah, I would probably say that's going to be the direction. But I always caution this by saying buyers beware. Because, listen, when you have a closed league, like Major League Soccer has, when you have a closed league, the only thing that matters to owners is franchise valuation. It is how much the franchise is worth, because ultimately, by keeping your payroll low, by keeping your overhead low, it means that you're going to be 100% profitable to your shareholders at your franchise, essentially your ownership group. And that is the only thing that really kind of matters here, right? When you're talking about ownership, that is what matters 100% of the time to every single owner. Now, some owners have a different approach, because some owners will say winning cures everything. Me personally, I believe into that. I believe into that ethos as well too, that winners want to attach themselves to winners. And so if you have a team that is routinely kicking the shit out of everybody year in and year out, and there is, because they're going to get rid of the roster rules that enforces parity, you're going to see a team potentially three-peat, those type of things. Well, that's going to be the team that stirs the drink when it comes to sponsorship revenue. And because that team is going to be on TV all the time, there's a good argument to be made that is going to be mutually beneficial to every single team in the league. The tide rise, the water rises, right? So I don't know, man. I don't know. What I do know is that there is going to be an emphasis on player development in the Larry Berg era. And I think Larry said, let's go ahead and bring this in. Let's go ahead and bring this one up. Let's do that. Let's do that. What is going on here? Okay. Jesus. All right. Let's go back to it real quick. All right. All right, here we go. Let's see. Apparently, Berg began playing soccer when he was 8 years old. Who knew? And deepened his love for the sport by watching the U.S. men's national team. He understands how vital development will be to the league's next stage of growth. Quality on the field is obviously number one. The more we grow the fandom and the more resource we have to improve the quality on the field, the more quality the field grows, the more fandom we'll have. But which comes first, right? The chicken or the egg? For Berg, improving the quality of play means creating more opportunities for young players and making the league's developmental system more productive. Doing so will also help in strengthen the U.S. and Canadian national team player pools. I want to see our youth academies and our MLS Next Pro be that much more productive. So yeah, that's the crazy thing about some of these quotes, man. It's this word salad, the ability to say something and nothing at the exact same time. He didn't necessarily lay out a plan. He just said, yeah, that we got to get better at it. It's like, yeah, no shit. But what I will say is that that MLS is already doing a pretty good job when it comes to youth development, because, it seems like every day in the summer we're hearing about a new young player leaving Major League Soccer for a European league, right? So that kind of just goes to show you the strength of how certain teams are already operating in this market when it comes to youth development, right? But you can't force youth development on every single team, right? Every team has a different set of priorities. And if you take the Band-Aid off, and allow teams to start spending, then that's exactly what they're going to do. They're not going to create pathways for youth. You know what I mean? That is going to be something that, unless there is like some sort of regulation baked into this, where you got to keep like, I don't know, three young kids in the like even then that would be retarded. Like it is what it is, right? Youth players have to develop. They have to have a pathway, and when they get there, they have to develop and then prove their worth by getting into the starting 11. If they can't, then yeah, they'll move, and whatever the case may be. But that being said, it's like the way that I look at this is that again, as I was saying earlier, there are going to be plenty of teams that are going to take this approach of cultivating their own stars, and the resources are not going to go into the open market. They're not going to go to South America to try to bring, a 25-year-old, badass. That's not going to happen. Or, even though that theoretically the doors could open to Europe, but there's going to be plenty of teams that are going to be looking at it and like, I'd rather not spend 20 mil on a player. I'd rather take that money, invest it into our academy, and continue that, maybe creating other youth divisions so we can get even younger, bringing kids at an earlier date, and then bringing them along, right? So me personally, I think that what we're going to see in the Larry Berg era is you're going to have the haves and you're going to have the have-nots. And what I mean by that is spending. You're going to have teams that are going to love to spend, right? Your Miamis, your NYCFCs, your two LA teams. Maybe you might see Cincinnati be a part of that group. But for the rest of them, yeah, you might see Nashville, maybe Nashville, Atlanta, potentially. But, the reality, it's like the rest of them, Philly, Red Bull, DC United, Orlando potentially, and the teams that I named earlier, right? They're going to be looking at this like, we would rather cultivate our own talent, and if that means like for the first 5 years of this, we're going to start a rebuild project where it's going to take 5 years to see the fruit of that labor, then so be it, right? So be it. More teams are going to be wanting to do that because, excuse me, let's be perfectly honest, right? It's cheap. It's cheaper to rebuild. I mean, outside of the Theo Epstein era in Chicago, the Cubs had pretty much been rebuilding for 60 years. No disrespect to Chicago, but it's true. It's true. And so you're never like, there's no real end date unless you start winning. Right. So from that standpoint, if I was an owner, I hate to be the one to say it. If I was an owner, I'd be probably looking in that direction as well too, because in the short term and in the long term, you're not spending crazy ass money. Young players are notoriously cheap. Now, if they pop and they're, and they have in your market, there's a fan interest, there's a groundswell for that player, then yeah, you're going to extend them. You're going to hand out a DP contract. You're going to keep them around because that guy, that player is going to probably make you 4 times the amount of money in which you're paying them. So from that standpoint, it's good business. But, for the most part, you're going to have teams selling young players off left and right, and that's just going to be a constant cycle. 100, it's going to be. I can't wait to see it because yes, I think I might be one of those type of guys that will tell you so. I told you so. I hate to be that. I hate to say it, but it is. Let's see. Let's welcome a couple people into the chat today. We have David Day, man. How you doing, David? Stateside Soccer. What's up? Let's see. Larry Berg knows ball. U.S. team. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He's a U.S. men's national team fan. Yeah, that's what he says. I don't. You know what? The funny thing about Larry is outside of his ownership in LAFC, outside of his, I guess you can say, love for fine art. By the way, why does every rich douche absolutely love art? I've never asked that question, but they're always like into art. They're always into like exquisite art. I've never understood that. Let's see. Flying Pheasant Official asks, can I ask a question? Yes, you can. Greg 1987, my guy, man. What's up, Greg? Hope you're doing well today, man. Ready for the weekend? Let's see. Money, the main reason for no promotion relegation. I actually don't think that is. I don't think that is correct. Because promotion relegation would actually make this league actually far more money. Because of the competition aspect and because television can actually sell it. It would actually be mutually beneficial. The reason why is because, number one, MLS doesn't want it, so the U.S. Soccer Federation isn't going to impose it on them. But also, number two, look below Major League Soccer, right? To open up the pyramid, you're going to have to open up you're going to have to allow the lower divisions to come into your league. And the infrastructure in the lower divisions, while in some markets it's improving, in other markets it's not great at all. And it's going to be hard to justify watching that on TV and you're watching a championship team playing in a minor league baseball stadium that's ground sharing training facilities. And, so the reality is there's a lot of investment that needs to happen in the lower divisions to even meet the minimum requirement for promotion. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's like, the reality is, like, you go to any modern footballing country and you go all the way down to the non-league, for Christ's sake, and they're playing in 5,000 to 10,000 seat stadiums that are specifically for the use of football. They're not sharing grounds with anyone. But me personally, promotion relegation would sell because competition always sells. Let's see. Larry Berg is correct. 100%. The USL is going to disappoint all you pro whale honks. I don't think. By the way, I don't think USL is going to disappoint at all. I think USL is going to be wildly popular because when it happens, there is going to be a lot of fans that between now and then that Major League Soccer is trying to get. They are soccer fans that I would use the term casual. That are casual MLS fans. They're Americans, but they rather watch the EPL or they rather watch La Liga or Liga MX, right? They are diehard soccer fans that don't watch it. And you ask these fans why not? Because there's no promotion and relegation. Well, there is going to be promotion and relegation. I would probably assume that a lot of these people are going to start supporting USL clubs when that happens. And that is going to be it's going to be a tricky endeavor for Larry Berg and his crew. It's like, well, wait a second. They're going to go above and beyond to try to cater to these fans. But regardless of what they do, they're not going to be MLS fans. But as soon as promotion relegation opens up with the USL and that USL Premier First Division, they will be. And that is going to be a tricky proposition for Major League Soccer because the only way that they would adopt promotion relegation is if their bottom line was affected in any measurable metric, right? So season tickets, they started losing season tickets to USL Premier teams and USL Championship teams. Match day revenue started dwindling. They noticed their viewership is starting to dwindle a little bit, but USL is starting to climb because promotion relegation, you can sell it on TV. There are storylines baked in with promotion relegation, and every single match of the season is a match of consequence because losses almost certainly mean a relegation where obviously promotion is the other end of the spectrum. But that being said, it's like, a November matchup between Detroit and Lou City could be either the difference between a potential playoff spot or the difference between somebody getting relegated. And just off that alone, it is something that Major League Soccer cannot replicate. See, that's the thing is they're going to go to a division. Major League Soccer is going to a division format. And the idea is twofold. Number one, it is to keep teams that are on the West Coast primarily in the West Coast. Same thing with the East Coast. And so you're going to be playing in your division. I think you'll play everybody in your division twice, and then maybe you'll play the rest of the league once. Okay, that's great. But it still doesn't answer the question of games of consequences, because losing doesn't mean anything. There's no relegation in your league. So if you finish in last place, okay, we'll just try again next year. That's the biggest problem that Major League Soccer is going to have to overcome, is how do you create games of consequence during the regular season? Because we live in an era now where the only league where its fans care about the regular season is the NFL. There's only 18 games that are played. And because of that, they have a distinct advantage and they only play once a week. And so you can kind of create that supply and demand, whether that's, literal supply and demand with tickets, or you can create it on TV as well too. And so they do a fantastic job. But Major League Baseball has 162. The NBA has 82. Same thing with the NHL. And Major League Soccer has a 38 game schedule plus Leagues Cup. And for those that are not participating in that, then it's the U.S. Open Cup. So from that standpoint, it's there's a strong possibility that it gets even worse, that nobody cares about the MLS regular season. I talk to soccer fans that I've been talking to for years. They don't start paying attention till Major League Soccer until September, because it's the sprint month. It's a sprint month leading into the playoffs, because all you have to do is look at the table to find out who's in contention, and then you'll watch for a month, and then it's playoffs. They do not pay attention until September. There's no reason to. They have a point. Let's see. Money is the main reason the EPL is the top league in the world by a lot. Yeah, true. That is very true. If MLS has not had the imbalanced rosters and opened up spending, where would the bulk of our U.S. domestic players find jobs? MLS would have been 80 to 90% foreign players. So number one, if they opened up the spending, you would see a lot of foreign players. You would see, well, that's not true. You would probably see maybe a 50-50 proposition, but where would all the other players go? Are you talking about the journeymen that are just there to pick up checks? They're not necessarily good enough to be considered top flight in this league. They're kind of like what I like to call GAM players, general allocation players. The ones that are only making $80,000 a year. They would probably find a home in the USL, if I'm being honest, because you would see a lot of foreign players, but you would also see a lot of homegrown players as well too. It would I envision a scenario 5 years down the road, they would be 50-50, 50% domestic, 50% foreign. Let's see. And what does Real Madrid care about? What are you talking about, Real Madrid? Anyways, let's see. I think getting away from the Apple TV and securing a TV deal with NBC, CBS, Fox will help MLS a lot. They've been on Fox, they've been on ESPN. Yeah, this time around, I think it would be a little bit different because they're going into it on a couple years of heightened spending, and they figured out their roster rules, so it's not confusing for people to follow along. They got rid of the parity. And so you would literally see certain teams flexing their muscle. That might be attractive to I guess you could say an NBC, CBS, or Fox. The interesting thing, though, is that Leagues Cup, which is currently happening right now, is tied to the Apple deal. That's the reason why they have Leagues Cup. It was an opportunity to get more games on TV. And once that leaves, if they decide to go in a different direction in 2029 when the Apple deal runs out, what happens to Leagues Cup? Now, I personally know that the Mexican fans, the Mexican teams, and the players do not want to play in it. And over the last 4 years, with it being primarily played in the United States, this is the first year that they're playing in Mexico, by the way. But the first 4 years, Mexican teams didn't care, and you saw a lot of lopsided wins for Major League Soccer teams. You never saw a Liga MX team in the semifinal. It was always an all MLS affair. And for the most part, Mexican teams looked at it like, okay, we have to play it, but are we going to try our best? No. If we win it, we win it, but it's not like we're going to go out of our way to, essentially, try hard in it. And so from that standpoint, it is what it is, right? So when this thing expires, is MLS keeping Leagues Cup? And if the answer is yes, when do you play it? Because when the calendar switches next year, how are you going to get Leagues Cup? Are you just going to pause the season to play a tournament that nobody wants? How is this going to work? I would assume that the Champions League, CONCACAF Champions Cup, is going to get reformatted to make it easier to play for the top two leagues that gross the most money, which is Major League Soccer and Liga MX. So maybe that thing gets reformatted and it's played like the Champions League used to play, where starting in October, you have a group stage that lasts until January. And then you start the knockout rounds in February, and that goes all the way to the end of the season. You have the U.S. Open Cup. Is this going to be a situation where instead of having Leagues Cup, that money that is spent to host it goes into U.S. Open Cup, which would probably be a little bit better, considering I think most Americans would prefer the U.S. Open Cup over this Mickey Mouse tournament. But where are you going to play it? Is it going to be a preseason friendly, or is it going to be like a preseason tournament? Is the plan to pause in mid-December through mid-January and have 1 month off for a for a winter break, and then play Leagues Cup primarily in the southern states where it's all nice and sunny during the winter? Where you're going to make sure everybody is like kind of in those areas. Like, how is that going to work? Or is this going to be at the end of the season? Because it just schedule wise, it doesn't make any sense to keep Leagues Cup at this stage, right? So these are questions that have to be, answered. Because me personally, it just makes sense. It makes sense for Major League Soccer to scrap Leagues Cup when the Apple deal goes. I mean, you've had at that point you'll have 7 of them, 8 of them. Okay, cool. That was fun. And that's it. Me personally, I'd rather see that money invested in the U.S. Open Cup. And, if the winner gets $2 million for the, Leagues Cup, it's the exact same. It's the exact same for the U.S. Open Cup. That would require a lot of work between the USL and Major League Soccer to get on the same page and market the hell out of it. But, I mean, you could run it just like you can run it either just like the FA Cup, or you can run it just like the Carabao Cup, and make it last for like a good 5 months. Who knows? We have Adrian, Spurs Diehards TTID. Good evening. How you doing, Adrian? Good to hear. Good to see you. In general, TV deals and sponsorship produce more revenue than gate receipts, 100%. Spurs get $120 million from ticket sales, but the majority of the revenue comes from TV sponsorship and advertising deals. 100% correct. 100% correct. 100% correct. That is true. But there's only a couple teams in Major League Soccer right now that could possibly pull that off. Most teams are dependent on their gate receipts right now because they have sponsorships, but nowhere near the level of a Premier League team. Did I watch Seattle versus Toluca last night? I watched a good part of it. Leagues Cup gets 1.47. I don't believe it. Anything that's coming from Major League Soccer, I don't believe it. Especially considering that until this year, Leagues Cup has been behind a paywall. Understand that. Leagues Cup was exclusively on Apple. It was behind a paywall to get it. I seriously doubt those numbers. See, you don't even care about Leagues Cup. Get rid of it. Yeah, I do and I don't. I think it's interesting because the level of talent, but in the four editions prior, you never got the best of the Mexican teams that were participating. The tournament they care about is the CONCACAF Champions League because obviously it gets into the Club World Cup and from there you're going to make a lot of money. Allegedly, although FIFA still owes teams that participated in last summer's Club World Cup, teams are still waiting on FIFA to actually pay them what they were scheduled to earn. I think Seattle was going to get $25 million for their participation in last summer's Club World Cup. FIFA still hasn't paid them yet, but yeah, it's a Mickey Mouse tournament, man. Like they literally stopped the regular season to play an exhibition tournament. No other. I can't, not off the top of my head, I can't think of another league that does that. That would literally stop the regular season to play a tournament with another league in a neighboring country. Like imagine if the Bundesliga did that. They stopped their season like in, I don't know, February for a month and then played some weird tournament with neighboring Netherlands. I don't like it. It just doesn't make any sense. Or like England does that and the Premier League stops for a month to play a tournament with the Scottish Premier. You know what I mean? Or the French League on. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. None whatsoever. And what is it like? And what does it mean when you win it? What does it mean? You get to go into the Champions League? Like that's a pathway to the Champions League. At least with the U.S. Open Cup, it's simple and straightforward. You made it from the beginning to the end of a cup tournament, and you get in. Okay, makes sense. This is a made up bogus tournament, and I don't like it. I don't like it. David A says, "LOL." I'm hearing Monaco has offered Flo to Tottenham. Yeah. Now the question is, does Tottenham actually want him? That's the real question. Maybe. I mean, he really is, for a guy that had 20 goal contributions last year. In order to get a striker through the door, I mean, he's probably going to be the one that has the best value. It's only going to be 55 million euros to get him. So makes a lot of good. That would be a good piece of business for Spurs. Flo did that. 69,000. Yeah, they opened it up. And Seattle showed up for that final. But what about every home game leading into that final? The lower bowl was half empty. Who gives a fuck about what the Boong is? Yeah, but it's like I was making a comparison, my guy. Leagues Cup will add Brazil and Argentinian clubs. At that stage, you might as well just play Copa Libertadores. And I heard that's on the table as well too. Listen, I don't know if this dude is going to be good for the league or not. That's the reality. We just don't know. We're not privy to the things that he's been able to do. Now it's been reported on. That's great. And maybe Paul Tenorio had some sources. Maybe he even talked to Larry Berg over the years. Maybe. But that being said, we're getting a secondhand account of his, I guess you could say, his politics within the league. Apparently that is the reputation that he has, is that he is able to get owners to agree in unison on things. And that, to me, I don't know if that's true or not. But that being said, it's like, when it comes to this upcoming offseason, it's going to be absolutely massive. Now, the interesting thing, though, is this going to be a situation where Major League Soccer says, okay, cool. Larry Berg was able to do all these great things. He was able to rally the troops. This is what we're going to do. We're going to have a salary cap of $35 million. We're going to have a salary floor of 15. No TAM, no GAM, no discovery rights. But we're not going to implement this until after the sprint season. So we'll have, this little 2-month sprint season. We'll take a summer. We'll have the summer window open, and then once the sprint season ends, that's when we'll start this new roster, leading into the 2027-2028 season. So, you're not going to be able to use it for the sprint. It's going to be the same model for the sprint, and then all of a sudden it opens up. So we're going to have to actually wait another full calendar year before we actually see it in what it looks like. Me personally, I think that would be a terrible decision. I mean, we're still, we're a year away from the start of the 2027-2028, and so we're not going to actually see it until the end of that season, and how that looks, and what increased spending looks like, and how it manifests in this league. Major League Soccer did a horrible job of picking up after the World Cup. Like, they had 8 years of runway from the time that they announced that we're hosting the World Cup in 2026 to 2026. They had so much time to be able to get their ducks in a row. So when you're coming out of World Cup 2026, it's the summer transfer window, and then you're walking into the 2026-2027 season. Like, they easily could have had their ducks all lined in a row. And instead, you come out of World Cup 2026 with a couple weeks of league games, and then you pause the league for the Leagues Cup. So anybody that is a casual soccer fan that became a soccer fan because of the World Cup, and you're domestically based and you're thinking about looking at a team, and all of a sudden you don't really know much about Major League Soccer, and this is how you get introduced to it. Yeah, they're not only is it difficult to explain, but with a straight face, but that being said, it's like, good luck. Good luck. Can I add Mexico as a new state? Why would I want Mexico? Why would I add Mexico? I don't want Mexico. Let Mexico be Mexico. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Time will tell. And I don't think that expansion is going to be as prevalent as it was over the last 15 years. Like, the way that Don Garber, and by the way, Don Garber is not going anywhere. He's not. He's just stepping down as commissioner. He is going to be the league. I guess the position is called chairman. He's still going to have a role within the league, so the influence of Don Garber will still be there. I need to point that out. Yes, Larry Berg will be the commissioner. Ultimately, he's going to be the representative of the ownership groups, but Don Garber will still be there in some capacity, in some form of fashion. But it's going to be interesting to see. I have no idea if this was a good hire or not, because we're going to have to take the long view on here, because we have the schedule switch. Excuse me. We have the schedule switch. We have the upcoming roster vote. And then we have the new TV deal coming up. And everything is going to lead into that TV deal. Once we find out exactly who is going to be the highest bidder, what that looks like as far as fan viewership, but also the dollar amount that is going to either allow this league to take off or it's going to keep it where it is. Because I guarantee you, if they're getting the same amount of money from ESPN or Fox, and I think this year it was 200 million this year. For the sprint season, it's 145 for that 2 month. And then in the 2027-28 season, it's back up to 200. And then in the last year, it's going to be like 275. And then the deal ends. So if Fox and ESPN give them like a $250 million a year contract, guarantee that salary cap is not gonna go up. Like, the cap going up is dependent on the amount of money that they make. Like, if they're able to get like a $500 million television per year type of contract, where it increases as the years go up, then yeah, like I can imagine seeing Major League Soccer teams looking at that, getting an extra, what I think it's like 16.6 per team. There's 30 teams. So yeah, you're like, each team is going to get like 16.6, essentially $16.5 million just for laying in the cut. So from that standpoint, when you think about, a team's match day revenue, you think about season ticket based merchandising and all these other things. Yeah, you can conceivably see, a salary cap in that $30 million range, which, your overall net spend per year is going to be somewhere in that $100 million range, which at that stage, you're up there with the big five in Europe. You're going to be spending more than the championship. And so from that standpoint, yeah, the competition is going to vastly improve. If Major League Soccer gets one of those type of deals, yeah, that would be life changing for American soccer. That really would be. But that is going to be the litmus test of Larry Berg's legacy. See, that's the thing with Don Garber. Don Garber oversaw the expansion era. His legacy, whether you like him or not, is going to be straight up. He took the league from 9-10 teams in his first full season in 2000 and took them to 30 in 20 years, 25 years. And the league is as healthy as it's ever been, and it's stable, and it's not going anywhere. Larry Berg's going to have a hard time cultivating that type of legacy. But that being said, he can. And he is now going to be in charge of the growth of competition in this league. Now, he can go to U.S. Soccer and say, listen, we're going to do pro rel. Maybe have a 15-15, 2 divisions where 3 go up, 3 go down, whatever the case, but it's still a close league. And you might be able to convince people that would be pretty cool. But that being said, it's like that in itself would be, that would be absolute landscape changing, but that shit's not going to happen. So I don't know what to tell you. Like, what I will say is that we will know if this was the right hire. I know a lot of people wanted the former Fox exec, and maybe I was kind of in that boat as well too, because it's like, if there's anybody that knows what a TV, a broadcast partner wants from a league and vice versa, it's going to be somebody that actually worked, that was an executive at a broadcasting company, would know exactly what they're looking for. And I thought that just maybe that in itself would be kind of the guy, that's kind of the guy that you want there. But apparently owners felt like Berg was the guy, and that maybe Berg, because I allegedly he's got good negotiating skills, that this is going to set this league up. But if it's the same deal, man, if it's the same deal that Apple gave us, that's a fail. That's an absolute fail. All right, guys, I'm gonna jump off because I do have work tomorrow, so I do got to take care of a few things. But this was a fun conversation, man. And do me a favor and please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and also hit that notification bell. And if you're watching on TikTok Live, thank thank you guys for tuning in. The link is in the description. You guys have a great evening. I will see you back Saturday morning here on Stateside Footy. So take care, guys. Good evening.